The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions. How goes it?
It's good, man. It's really good. Because I have this music in my head like all the time anyway. And now that we played the game for a couple weeks, I feel a little bit less crazy because I've like topped off my excuse for having this music in my head. So like it's brought me back down to earth a little bit.
Yeah, because so now for at least the next few weeks, you're like, oh well, I just played this game, so that's why I got it in my head. Yeah. And then eventually it's gonna be one of those things where the excuse starts to wear thin, where it's just like, oh man, I really don't want to go. I really don't want to go. To this restaurant. I had a bad experience. That was 15 years ago. Yeah. So
it's not even an Italian place anymore. It's a Chinese food restaurant.
Exactly.
So we played Yoshi's Island, which I got to ask you before we get into anything significant. I kind of want to know, do you at any point in your childhood or now in your adulthood remember ever thinking of this game as Super Mario World 2 : Yoshi's Island? Because that is technically its full name, and I refuse to call it that.
No, it was just Yoshi's Island. Oh, have you played Yoshi's Island? Yes, I have. Have you? Oh, absolutely. And then we would talk about Yoshi's Island. And it's funny because when we were discussing doing this one, I said like, oh, well, why don't we play Yoshi's Island? And it wasn't, I actually, you were like, yeah, sure. And then, when I went to, find it, the game, our games are out, or I have alphabetized my games, right? And so, I went to the Wise and
right where it
should be there. and I was like, wait. And then I actually, when you look at the cartridge, right, it says, Super Mario World. It does say it, like the words are there, but it's kind of like Super Mario Brothers 2, Yoshi's Island, So yeah, it's Yoshi's Island. That just is what it.
And I feel like I swear that I've seen it both ways, where it's like, first name comma or last name comma first name last name, where I've seen Super Mario World 2 : Yoshi's Island, and also Yoshi's Island comma Super Mario World 2, which from having worked in Blockbuster for a lot of years, the idea of like, oh, this is non-standardized, and the way you screw with it completely changes where you would alphabetize it. And it's like, let's just not pretend this is a sequel to Super Mario World, y'all, because it's not. If anything, it's a prequel, and also it's not that. It's just another game, and it's a game called Yoshi's Island.
Right, exactly. Because Yoshi's Island sells what the experience is about. I mean, realistically, if you were alphabetizing this at, Blockbuster, right, the idea would be put it under Y for Yoshi's Island, and then put a single row in the S's saying go to Y's for Yoshi's Island.
It's over there.
It's not where you think it is. Like if you're the one who's the linguistic purist saying, well, it's actually super. Shut up. You're dumb. You're bad. And you should feel bad.
Well, and there's even like, I fall in both of these camps when it suits me best. Like, I was just talking to somebody about Star Wars, and they were asserting like, oh, well, there was this grand story and blah, blah, blah. And, in 1977, when A New Hope came out, and I went, actually, in 1977, Star Wars came out. It wasn't A New Hope until later, when they decided, because it was successful, that they were going to keep making movies. And the guy I was talking to was kind of like, oh crap, you're right. And I was like, yeah, I know. Sometimes being a pedant lets you win the argument, but I'm pretty sure I just damaged our friendship.
Yeah, but you know what? You didn't like that guy, so win-win. You walked out less close to him and also right. So, or was it bureaucrat Conrad? You are technically correct.
Best kind of correct.
But yes, no, we played Super Mario Brothers 2 Yoshi's Island for the SNES
Yes, the Super NES, which I have to say I noticed because I know we want to talk about visuals first, and I think this game is really beautiful, and we'll gush about it in a minute. But the minute I fired this up, I had that realization that this was an end of console era game because you can look at a game like the original Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation and go, "Oh my god!" like video games used to look like that, and then you look at a game like Final Fantasy 9 or Final Fantasy 8 that came out like way closer to the end of, or Final Fantasy Tactics, like that came out way closer to the end of the PS1's life cycle, and you're like, yeah, PlayStation 1 games looked awesome. But like with this, it's the reason it was problematic is because not only is it near the end of the Super Nintendo's life cycle, but that was also near the end of the 2D life cycle when we were trying to like go into 3D. So there's a bunch of places in this game that are like, what if we just shoehorned random 3D in here?
Right? Yeah, no, I noticed that at one point where, I think it's in one of the dungeons where it first comes up, but you just start running, and as opposed to being in a flat 2D, the ground is tilted. So that way, you're in like this false 3D, but you have no like
no Z-axis.
Nope. Yeah, there is no Z-axis. There's no reason for that illusion, like there's no moving up or down, closer or further away in the screen. So I was like, well, why? And it was very stark in my opinion, because all of a sudden there was this new axis. I was like, oh wow, am I gonna have to deal with this? It's like, no. For some reason, we basically changed the angle of the camera for this for funsies.
Yeah.
That is all.
Even right in the opening, when is it Kamek, the wizard guy?
Oh, I just called him wizard guy.
Wizard guy. When there's a shot where he flies from like kind of opposite the screen, like toward the screen, like past the camera. So he is going from left to right as well as like toward you along the Z-axis, and it's everything else is pixel art, and then there's just this, and you can tell not just because it moves very differently than the way the pixel art moves, but all the textures, like their shading is different and everything, so they look like stickers like against the background of pixel art. It's very, and I mean, it's not used overly. There's a few places in the game where there's like the walls that fall, or like the thing spins. So if you stand on it, you'll eventually spin and fall off of it toward the camera. And it's not overwhelming. It's not completely immersion breaking, but it does tell you like, oh, this was one of the last games to hit the Super Nintendo before they went to the N64. And I actually did do, I know it's hard to believe, I actually checked those numbers. And it turns out this came out in 1995 and the N64 came out in 1996.
Right. And back in that era, if memory serves, is, because I remember, when Mario 64 and, Ocarina of Time, perhaps the best game ever made. No, it actually, it in my opinion, hasn't aged super well.
Taking notes to edit that out.
But anyways, is that back during those days, it was 3D was better than 2D every time. Like it was just,
it was like, if we can give you a Z-axis, doesn't matter what it looks like, doesn't matter how pointy people's faces are, and in Final Fantasy VII, his hands look like giant cow hooves.
Yeah, actually, and his shoulders look like he is just jacked, with these, but then like really thin arms, like he always does shoulder day.
Yeah,
but
shoulders and forearms.
Yeah, shoulders, forearms, and like, if I remember correctly, calves.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. He actually, Cloud Strife was probably the closest to the negative body image that like Barbie enforced, like like no one's shoulder to waist ratio. No one could have that. Just like I think the original Barbie, or the one that was popular in like the 80s, her ankles were so thin and her breasts were so large that she wouldn't be able to walk.
Oh yeah, and I definitely know that for the Barbie, at one point they said that her waist was so small that she simply could not exist. You know, there's, but where does your food go? You know, like,
not in there. Yeah.
no,
Yeah. So that's what we were dealing with early 3D. Like, it doesn't matter how impossible it is, make it 3D.
right, exactly. And I think that now that we kind of, to a degree, have gotten away from that, is now a game when they're making it, they say like, well, does being in 3 dimensions service the gameplay? You know, for instance, like Super Meat Boy, just straight up 2D game. You know,
retro indie platformer is the name of that genre.
Can we get some more words in there? I don't think that there's enough.
I mean, to be fair, it does exactly what it says on the tin, right? Like,
yeah, no, it totally is. But and they make some smart choices with that game. But the idea that you can have a 2-dimensional game and that would be superior to, if you tried to make Super Meat Boy 3 dimensions, it would fall apart. Or for a perfect example, Sonic the Hedgehog, that that just completely falls apart like it deflates like a flan in a cupboard if you just it's just a mess. So it was definitely a little bit jarring to see needless 3D thrown in, because nowadays you'd be like, why would you ever do that? But at that point it was just because 3D is better than 2D every time.
Yeah, and it was. I feel like we still have the arms race of like PC Master Race. Our graphics are always better, but we've gotten to a point where someone who has like an Xbox One S, X1, One S, One, whatever the newest one is called, and like the PS4 Pro Plus 2000 or whatever the hell that one's called, and then a PC gamer, they're arguing over like the fidelity of individual pores on like the guy's nose in Call of Bro Duty Shooter 8000. I'm like, I don't care about that. But when you're talking about something as dramatic as, do we add an entire additional axis to the game, which will completely change everything?
Right.
That's a very different conversation. And I mean, that's the conversation we were having in the mid 90s.
I mean, and the interesting thing, I think, to kind of, I just thought of it, but that would put it into perspective. It's like, oh, well, playing a 3-dimensional game, it can't be that hard, right? To create, just that you make it 3D, it was 2D, make it 3D. It's like, okay, well, let's take that logic to its clear conclusion. Let's make a 4-dimensional game where you have to play it as you have already played it and will already play it. Like, you have to be aware of both realities, and then those realities impact your existing point in time. It's like, what? That sounds insane. Exactly. Adding dimensions all willy-nilly can get out of hand.
Part of me wants to refute that all dimensions would be like a linear growth curve. So like adding time is the same complexity as adding a z-axis. Yeah, part of me wants to be like, no, obviously that's hyperbolic, but no, I like the idea of, well, the 5th dimension is just 1 degree harder than adding time as a dimension.
Yeah, now all you have to do is just remember to keep track of all other alternate realities in which you are playing this game and how they can impact your existing reality. It's like, hey man, let's keep it going. Just throw in a 6th. It's a fire sale on dimensions. All dimensions must go.
You sound like the professor explaining how the Planet Express ship flies to his clone.
Yeah, you just move the universe around it. It's easy. But aside from the occasional times when they just threw in 3D for funsies, the visuals are just stunning.
They're so good. And I didn't realize that the like crafty, I think the like crafty, hand-drawn, everything's made out of crayons kind of art style that newer Yoshi games utilize. I think this may be the game that started in, because Yoshi had some Nintendo games, but they were all like dumb puzzle games.
Yeah, no, I'm confident that this. In fact, I'm so confident that the minute that we're done, I'm going to go research it, and we can amend this, because we will absolutely follow up on that.
Yeah. Look in the show notes for all that documentation.
But yeah, no, I think that I'm confident that if it didn't pioneer it, it was certainly the one that is the most remembered. Yeah,
it cemented it.
Correct. And in my own headcanon, because first of all, I think that it's great. I think it goes with the aesthetic of the game, but in my mind, it's because that's the way Yoshi's see the world. Like it's the exact same world as Super Mario's. It's just that's the way their mind processes it. You know?
Did you watch Rugrats when you were a kid?
Yes, love that show.
Okay. Do you remember that occasionally there would be like them telling stories to one another about a thing that happened, and then it would be in this like super baby crayon hand-drawn style, and during the credits they would always have to explicitly thank the artists who could do good art but that looked like it was done by a 4-year-old. and I can't remember like all the ridiculous plots that led to them going into that art style, but that's so like, are Yoshi's like, are they simpletons? And so they're seeing the world the way humans would see the world, but it's all like childish? Or is it just that like they have some weird set of sensors? I mean, they do stick their tongues out a lot. Are they like snakes that's like part of how they sense the world?
Well, I think that like to me, it is just that I think the case could be made for them being simpletons because, at least as far as D&D is concerned, you could easily make a case for them having an int of 3 or less because they don't have a spoken language.
Maybe they just don't speak a language you understand, racist.
Correct. And
in fact, no, I would go so far as to say Yoshi's definitely have a spoken language because there are multiple scenes of them in a circle, like doing something. They don't have a written language that we've ever seen, so they must be able to stand in a circle and speak.
Well, no, they can stand in a circle and understand each other.
My God, maybe they're telepaths.
But no, I mean, I think that you could easily make the case that they are probably more akin to like dog intelligence than to.
Right. They are very intelligent animals.
Right, but still animals,
Right.
And so, and I would. This is, I think it's monstrous, but let's go with monstrous. So you could definitely see their view being a little bit more childlike, and then also it'd be very vibrant and colorful because that would kind of be their worldview, is that the world is actually this beautiful, wildly nicely colored place, because you would have to have that view and mindset in order to consistently follow Mario around with how horribly he abuses the Yoshis.
Yeah, well, I would say it might be a combination of them viewing the world that colorfully, like whether it's denial or they're just super happy all the time. And also that the Mario universe is typically known for being colored exclusively by Crayola crayons. So, I mean, if you combine those things, like the world is brighter and more colorful than our world, and right. The Yoshis see everything like turned up to 11, and it's like, oh yeah, it makes perfect sense that everything looks like it's made out of yarn and colored with crayons and made out of craft paper.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, the minute I turned it on, I was thinking about. I was like, well, this takes place in the same universe, so theoretically it should look the same, but it doesn't. And what's a fun headcanon? So, but that's like, well, we're seeing it through the eyes of the Yoshis. And so then a part of me was just kind of like, for example, in the jungle stage where they're like the monkeys and they throw stuff at you, right?
Yeah.
Well, there are jungle stages in Super Mario World, right? So to me, that's like the same type of stage. Like those two things would look theoretically the same. It's just that's the difference in the way they see it. So,
well, and there's actually a mechanic to lend credence to your belief, which is there's you see them early and then you see them again several worlds later. The big fluffy ball things that like get you high.
Oh yeah, no, I totally wanted to talk about those.
Yeah, because I mean this actually speaks a lot to what they were able to do with visuals at this late stage in the Super Nintendo, is like smooth textures become crazy. So like a flat platform gets like wavy, and so your controls are screwed up and the world actually looks screwed up. So like if you just try and stand still, you'll actually like rock kind of side to side on your feet a little bit. But if you're on a small enough platform, you will eventually fall off it, because the platform, I mean, it's supposed to be a simulacrum of your disorientation, but the platform appears to physically also alter in shape. Like the music gets all crazy and stuff. So, I mean, we would only see that if we were seeing the world through the Yoshi's eyes. So I'm going to say headcanon accepted.
Sweet. Love it. And yeah, no, I loved because I remember as a kid, it was like, touch fuzzy, get dizzy is the name of that stage. and this time, the minute I played it, immediately I remembered what they were talking about. The mechanic they were talking about. It's like, he's not dizzy. Yoshi is high as a kite,
Yeah, I mean, his eyes get all like bulbous and kind of. I think his eyes stay white, but his little pupil becomes like a little pink or something.
I think if I remember correctly, it does the thing where like his pupil becomes like a U,
Something. I mean, he is noticeably inebriated.
Oh yeah, no, I mean he like in that moment you expect him to say something like, "Hey man, what if Mario and Luigi are the same person?" What? Like just something really just, that he wakes up the next morning, he's like, that's not deep. I was just high, But yeah, no, I loved that. Was an interesting mechanic. So this just the mechanic of touching the different boxes that turns you into different things, like the helicopter or
yeah. Are we going to talk about this right now? Because I have thoughts and feelings.
No, let's hold off on the mechanics. But the one of the visuals that they do is so the choo-choo, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you become the choo-choo, you can just chuck around as choo-choo, but then there are tracks on the walls, right?
Yeah, and that 3D held up a lot better than some of the other 3D.
Yes, absolutely, I agree. But then all of a sudden I realized, because I had noticed as I was playing through, that sometimes there were these like choo-choo tracks on the walls, right? And I was like, that's kind of like a cool kid thing, And then when I became the choo-choo and was on the walls, that was my eat fuzzy, get dizzy moment of, like all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, there were tracks other places on the walls. Wait, was there a way for me to become a choo-choo back then? Oh my God, I gotta go back and play those levels. Which, I mean, for the one I was thinking of, I'm confident that it was just an aesthetic, choice. But still, it definitely had added a degree of depth to the universe by just literally recycling a visual.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of incredibly tight attention to detail. Like, one of the things I made a specific note of, because the second you get into a stage and you see a coin for the first time, your brain is like, those coins don't look right. But you only have to look at it for just an instant more to recognize that it is a Mario coin sized version of the giant Yoshi coins from Super Mario World. So instead of having the straight line up and down in the middle, which is actually based on like very old fashioned Japanese money, they have the little tiny, it's just barely there and they spin. So you have to kind of look for it, but they have the little Yoshi outline. And it's like, oh, if those coins were bigger, they would be the Yoshi coins from Super Mario World. So like, we're on Yoshi's Island, so of course they have Yoshi money, whereas when you go, offshore to Super Mario World, the Yoshi money is only there in very large denominations because they're like rare from a foreign land. And it's like,
interesting.
Yeah, because I mean there was a time in history when that's what Japanese money was shaped like. They were big, kind of oval shaped gold coins. So I mean, there's like this whole cool little tiny bit of Japanese culture sort of overlaid on or underlaid. I guess it's like the foundation of like how they made this decision. And then there's all these other little clever things, like the foreground sometimes is like flowers that actually go over the action and scroll at a different speed because they're closer to you than what's happening in like the main part of the stage. And then the stages with the big chomps that like rain down and trying to eat you, like you can actually see them way the hell off in the background, which reminds you like, oh, there is stuff over there. Like the game is in 2D, but from their point of view, the world is not 2 dimensions.
Yeah, exactly. And just and like you said, like, so that I think was some of the faux 3-dimension stuff that actually did hold up pretty well, especially because if I remember correctly, yeah, like for or a better example, the what you said with the chomps, having that telegraph, right? So you've got something in the background that's like moving, draws your eye to it, and then all of a sudden it jumps out, so that it's not only giving you the player the sense that you're in a larger world than strictly the two dimensions that you're seeing, but they also use it as a way to, mechanically reinforce the idea that, like, hey, this chomp, it's gonna come get you. Be aware. But yeah, the colors were all very, very bright. It was all very enjoyable. There was one of the visuals though that really stood out to me because it was, I don't know, a little bit more intense than I was expecting. Was in one of the Boo castles, and I don't remember if they reused this, but it was one of the first ones where it's like a little slime dude that's either on the ceiling or on the floor, and then when you get close enough to him, he goes like boom, and he like jumps out at you. Yeah, that was kind of intense, man.
Yeah, there's a few of the ghost looking things that are either like jump scary, which I mean I hate. I mean these are kid friendly jump scares, but I just don't like jump scares. So it's like crap jumping out at me. But then there's one of the ghost house visuals that they then reuse in other stages a couple times just haphazardly, where it's the ghost Shy Guys that are up in the ceiling. And they've formed like a human chain to hand explosives quickly to each other and then drop them on you.
Yes.
And you never, I mean, you kill Shy Guys like they're like it's going out of style. Like there's an all Shy Guy buffet and you are the only person interested in eating there. And so where do these Shy Guy ghosts come from? Because I'm thinking something horrible like normal Shy Guys were placed in that wall and then they just left them there.
Or worse. I don't know if this is better or worse, but like, so the mechanic that you're talking about, there's no real way for you to interact with the Shy Guys, right?
No, because I don't think you can eat them through the ceiling.
So when a Shy Guy, after you eat them, right, and then encapsulate them into a shelled prison and then hurl that prison as hard as you can into something else, inevitably killing or destroying the contents, right?
Yeah, everybody dies.
That's their purgatory. Like that's where they go when they die.
To that little assembly line.
That little assembly line. And there's just hundreds upon hundreds about hundreds. And that's all they do is they just pass those bombs around. And a part of me wants to be too, on a side note, just kind of be, like OSHA would have a field day with that because, it's just because it's a live explosive, right? And
what's going to happen to them? They're dead.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so, well, but is this like a DBZ abridged or sorry, DBZ abridged GBZ mechanic where it's like, well, if you die while you're dead, then you super die. Like, can they super die? But no, because I'm just picturing, like a whole line of people handing off a live bomb and somebody just being like, all right, here you go, Jim. We always knew that Jim was a little bit of a screw up. And then he just like grabs it, you think, and oh no, and then boom,
They might be like Yoshi seeking missiles that only detonate near. I mean, this isn't true because you see them explode all the time, but I'm trying to come up with a way that this is acceptable. I'm also, so I know you never played the Metal Gear Solid series, but in the fourth one, you walk down like this river of the damned and all these like, there's this one spirit guy who's like harassing you. He's like, you're fat. You didn't do good in math in high school. And he's like yelling at you. And there's, all these ghosts like coming up out of the river, and this is where Hideo Kojima is like a brilliant also psychopath because the ghosts that come up out of the river at you are actual enemies you have been killing in the game. And if you make it all the way to that point in the game without killing anyone, there are no ghosts in the river. And I know, right? It's very cool, and I know that this is not true, but it'd be awesome if you got to that first castle and you had killed no Shy Guys.
That would be
so there's just no one up there.
Yeah, no, that would be fantastic. And the thing that I think can lead credence to this theory of this is Shy Guy purgatory is the reason why the bombs never explode while the Shy Guys are handing them off is because the bombs only activate when they enter the material plane. But when they're in the plane of the damned for Shy Guys, they don't explode. So
Which, okay, I I want to talk about Shy Guys, but I have one last crazy thing I got to ask you about this theory. Is the most effective way for ghosts to kill or otherwise inhibit Yoshi from his quest to man like a small munitions factory? Because doesn't it seem weird that the choice for how the ghost Shy Guys interact with you is by dropping tiny bombs?
Yeah, yeah, not like somehow sucking the life out of you or anything like that.
I
Yeah,
mean, even just regular boos just like hurt you by like running into you. Like they're enemies. They do damage. Like why do the ghost Shy Guys? They're like, hey, can we give bombs to some of the live Shy Guys? No, wait, that'd be crazy dangerous. But there's all these purgatory Shy Guys.
well, okay, so as long as we're being awful, let's just shoulder into it. So what if it's like Dante's Inferno, where there's different levels of deaths for Shy Guys, So like all of those Shy Guys were thieves, and so or whatever crime, and so
Adulterers.
that's why they're there. Yeah. But if the Shy Guy instead was not there for thieving or what's one. Virgil had some weird stuff that he thought was worse than other stuff. I remember thinking that even when I read it back in the day, being like, really? Thing A worse than thing B? But anyways.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder if like some of those were just his personal like grudges. Like, and the 8th level of hell is for Jerry, who stole my sandwich out of the break room fridge, even though my name, Virgil, right there on the front and back of the bag. I know you know that was my sandwich, Jerry.
Fuck you, Jerry. Just like and yeah, actually I think that's absolutely true. But yeah, so that's my best thought on. So I like how in this beautiful, colorful story about a dinosaur desperately trying to keep an infant alive, we've already gone to the place of so Shy Guy purgatory, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we didn't put it there; they put it there. But I do actually want to talk about the Shy Guys and visuals specifically because the Shy Guys and Koopa Troopas are also guilty of this. Like they are the poster children for palette swaps, but that also like you don't feel bad about. Like, because there's Shy Guys of different colors and some of them behave differently, but then there's Shy Guys that behave the way other Shy Guys have behaved despite not having that Shy Guy's colors. So you don't feel like you're being wronged because the way they behave is like obvious. Like you can see there's the ones that do the little like flip. There's ones up on little stilts. There's the ones that carry the like kind of racist like Zulu armor with like it's like the bark shield and like a long spear and they have like face paint and but all of those, regardless of the color the Shy Guy is, all behave the way their obvious attack makes them behave. And the ghost Shy Guys have adorable little ghost tails and they're the only ones that are white. So maybe maybe that's Shy Guy heaven. Like an attempt for the rest of time, you get to just try and kill Yoshi with bombs. Which it's their Valhalla.
Yeah, I was gonna say, which means that's all they ever wanted. It's like all I ever wanted in life was just to throw a bomb at a Yoshi and an infant and just have it explode. That's all I ever wanted, Interesting, but yeah, I think that. I think that, and this is something that I've just kind of started to formulate in my mind as we've been doing these, is, there, like you said, there's good palette swapping and then like bad palette swapping, and good may even be a little bit strong, good / innocuous, good / harmless, right? But yeah, like the Shy Guys would be an example of, to me, like harmless palette swapping, where literally they're not saying like, oh, well, you fought Shy Guy A, but now you're fighting this more powerful Shy Guy who's the exact same Shy Guy, just, different color, right? So that to me is like the harmless one. Good palette swapping would the Turtles would be an example where the palette swap is telegraphing to you the way they behave. Like the green ones will just walk right off a cliff, whereas the red ones won't,
Right.
And then bad palette swapping being kind of what I alluded to earlier, where what they're trying to do is extend the game's content by simply, by just palette swapping. So the Shy Guys, in my opinion, you feel like that they've been palette swaps just to kind of lend some variability to the visuals, so you're not staring at like 100 red guys. It's like, oh, some of them are red, some of them are green, some of them are blue, and then it just helps that out. But I would think they would err on the side of bad palette swapping if all of the Shy Guy enemies in like stage 1 were all red, and then you got onto like stage 7 and now they're all blue, and it's like, well, they're still Shy Guys,
Yeah.
But what this one does is it's like, in this stage they're all the Zulu fighters, and in this stage they're all on stilts, and in this stage this other mechanic difference. So that makes me think
even that they still mix up, where like a stage that has them on stilts doesn't only have them on stilts. Sometimes they come flying out of the little tube endlessly, so that you have an endless source of, eggs you can make. Sometimes they're just walking around. Like it's a very gentle dance the Shy Guys are doing, where you don't feel like, oh, now there are green ones. Neat.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's but you definitely notice that there's different colors, which actually makes them feel a little bit more like a realistic part of the world. Because if every single guy on stilts was also wearing red, you'd be like, huh, I know the stilts and their clothing are unrelated, so why are all the ones on stilts wearing red, right? Whereas like sometimes the ones on stilts are wearing green, sometimes the Zula guy is yellow, and like you get variability in the clothes, which makes the little people that you eat and turn to eggs and then murder feel more like people.
Yeah, which is I personally, when I'm binding somebody into a situation that they then have no further control right before I hurl them full speed into a solid object, I want to humanize them as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's important. I also think that the visuals in this are far more violent as an adult.
Yeah,
right. Like when you like, there's the little round guys. They're not Goombas. They're like little perfect circles, and like you bounce off them. You have to like stomp them, and they pop. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. You can actually eat those small ones and turn them into eggs, but like if you stomp them, they pop. And one of the mechanics that's significant about that is you can't move during the pop. Like it's like you lose your footing, so you're like shaken for an instant, which can matter depending on what's going on around you. So there's a reason that there's that visual difference, because it actually impacts gameplay. But the pop feels like aggressive, right? Like you jump on them and you crush them into oblivion when they're like solid things like Goombas, or you jump on these guys and they explode, and there's like little stars, and it's like kaboom, and you just feel like, as a kid you're like, he popped, and as an adult you're like, oh my god, I'm so sorry for your loss.
I'm so sorry, widowed blob thing. Yeah. You sit on them so hard that you compress them into like energy, and then they just explode. Yeah, no, it's
and like when you kill piranha plants, they like wither and die.
Yep. Yeah, no, that, and also one of the bosses, I don't know why, kind of hit home for me. It's the one where it's one of the little bloop things, and Curdlemac, or whatever his name is. That's the kobold god from D&D.
You were way off.
Yeah, no, not even a little bit. Anyways, but so he turns a little bloop into a huge bloop, and you just throw eggs at him until he expires, right?
Right.
But when you throw an egg at him, it rips through his body, tearing off small other children, I guess, now sentient life forms, Yeah,
I mean, I assume it's like when a cell divides, except, that it thinks and has feelings.
Yeah, exactly. So like that was I was like, huh, dark.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there's just such a variety of death and damage taking animations. Like the way turtles die is different than the way Goombas die, which is different than the way like Shy Guys die and piranha plants. Like somebody had to sit there and they were like, okay, we're gonna design this new enemy. Yeah, that's fine. How will it die?
I need to know its exact death animation. And while we're circling around this, the fact that you, in order to get your eggs, you have to eat and then encapsulate them, right? That's pretty awful, right? Because you're basically using them as human weapons. I mean, that's certainly a war crime. Just first of all, I am confident that that would be outlawed by the Geneva Convention. But the reason why I'm so sure about that was because I got a little frustrated with one particular enemy in the game and did something that took up more time than I'd like to admit, but I was pretty satisfied with, which was, you know how they're the little mice, right?
Yeah.
And they'll come in and, you know, at first I was like, little mouse, whatever. And then I saw
whatever horrible thing you're about to tell me you did to them, I approve of. I hate those mice. I hate them so much.
No, they're the worst, right? So what I did was I went in and ate a whole bunch of the mice, right? And because so in my mind I asked the question, well, why are they stealing the eggs, right? They're probably stealing them for food, you know, because they're eggs, right? So they probably like steal the egg, bring it back, and then crack it open with their little cabal of family or whatever, and eat the egg, right?
Cabal was the first word you went for.
Yeah, their crucible of. Yeah, so they go back to their little enclave, right, and then of rats and eat the eggs. So the first time they stole from me, I was like, I felt like a mob don, you know, saying like you stole from me. No, I need to make an example of you. So I went in and it was like kind of, you know, like there was an upper area and then a lower area. So I went into the upper area and just egged as many of the rodents as I could. And then I went to the lower level and let all of the rodents steal my eggs. I made them eat their friends.
I absolutely approve of this war crime.
And so, like, you know, mechanically, you could be like, well, you obviously you lost out. You lost all of your eggs. It's like, no, I'm pretty sure that they lost out when they cracked that egg open. When Phil, you know.
Yeah.
So,
no, but you lost all your eggs. I didn't lose anything. They lost something.
I lost an egg. They lost their humanity. But anyway, so that was my little dip into darkness when I realized they were taking my eggs from me.
So the last thing I want to say about visuals, just in general, is, and I feel like any game that's stage based, we eventually are likely to either praise or decry this, which is that the variability in mechanics, which we'll get to, but the variability in design of each of the bosses, because every world has two bosses. It's got like the mid boss and then like the main and Bowser Castle boss, I guess. Right. And every single one of them is like unique and interesting looking. And like the sometimes it's just like a bigger version of whatever, but they get over that really fast because the Piranha Plant boss is like the only time you see like spiked vines, and it's like they didn't just make the Piranha Plant bigger, they made it like they supercharged it, right? Like it got the ooze. It's, you know, it's the pro version of the Piranha Plant, like whatever, but it's like it's different and unique. And then like with the frog, it doesn't make the frog bigger, he makes you smaller.
So I like that one. Yeah.
Right. So like there's a lot of clever mechanical things going on. So it's not just, oh, you're fighting a larger whatever, but there's also just like varied and smart and interesting visuals, because I mean, you know, it's a platformer, like it can get samey, and somehow each one of the bosses feels like really good.
Oh yeah. And actually, I all of the bosses feel really good to fight and to kill. I mean, you know, they, as we were saying, the death animations are very gruesome in, you know, in that in that kind of clever way. I guess that because they fall again so far on the left of the uncanny valley, right, is that the reason why they're gruesome, quote unquote, to us is because they're like an empty jar, you know, so we're projecting onto them like, well, what's happening in this visual. But honestly, the visual itself isn't as awful as a lot of the visuals that we would see in modern gaming. So
no, it's all kid violence. I mean, it's not worse than any, it's actually far more tame than anything you might see in like Looney Tunes.
Yeah, absolutely. But it feels good, you know. So when, you know, the boss goes and goes like boom, boom, and, you know, like that, yeah, I mean, you feel good. You feel like you've accomplished something. So I think that to put my capstone on visuals, that they never were antagonistic to the gameplay. They felt really good. They felt really varied, and I don't know, they made me want to keep playing the game. Like it wasn't like some of the games we played that was palette swap the game where it was just a slog, and you were just kind of like, oh great, now I got to go fight another enemy, but this one's purple. Like it was fun. I wanted to see what part of this world I got to see a part of next.
And I think your sound effect is probably as good a segue as any into what the audio is like in the game, because I mean, I know your troglodyte ears have now become like a thing, and you probably didn't even recognize that this game had music, but there was in fact music, and there's a lot of like homages and thematic plays off of Super Mario Brothers and Super Mario World music, and I don't care about any of that. What I care about is that the general, like the default level music that like most of the levels in the game use is the like dun 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 dun. Yeah. So that song is both hummable and whistleable. And I like to do both of those things because it's weird in modern society to just walk around singing. And also this song has no lyrics. So I would like, without exaggerating, I would say 2 to 3 times a week minimum, you could catch me humming or whistling that song.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, I think that, and I think it speaks to the catchiness of these songs that I actually did. First of all, it was very much so like the minute that this song came on, I was, 8 years old again, or however old I was, 17.
Yeah, sent back in time.
Yeah, just, right there playing it. It was really enjoyable. And I felt that it, kind of the tone and peppiness to it really kind of, again, reinforced the fact that it's like, hey, this isn't, the stakes, it doesn't have to be super serious for a game to have stakes, right? You're trying to get Mario from point A to point B and fend off the Bowser's entire army, right? In the process, sure. But it doesn't have to be like super grim and oh my gosh, like these stakes are high because the music's super intense. It's like, no, the music is kicking way back, like very, very fun, and yeah, and I absolutely agree. It's very hummable. It's really easy to get into your head, and honestly, I enjoyed it a lot.
Well, then also, like, to your point about stakes, when you're in a mid-world castle or like the end world Bowser castle, and the music it's not grim, but it's definitely like heavier and more like kind of spooky, mysterious, like things are happening, like you notice, right? Because that's the game's way of telling you, like, hey, if you were struggling with the earlier levels, you're way more likely to die in here, because that was just like the outside world where everything was fine. Now you're like in the fortresses of the enemy and everything is super not fine, right? So like, so you kind of have this clear indicator, not just from the graphics being different, but also from the music taking a staunchly different tone and melody and quality, where you're like, oh, okay, now the stakes have been raised a little bit, but still not like such a juxtaposition from the rest of the world that you're like, oh, it feels incongruent.
Well, yeah. And I think that, like we were saying, is that you don't need, in order to feel like there's something on the line, you don't need everything constantly kicked up to an 11, right? So basically, like, the music is setting a tone, a lighthearted, fun, like, because the game it's supposed to be a lighthearted, fun platformer. There are things at stake, there are things going on, you're aware of what they are, you're aware of what your goal is, but the point isn't to be stressed out of your mind the whole time, like when you're playing, I would assume Metal Gear Solid, from what I've seen of you play of it. That
crap is stressful. This ain't that, which is good.
Yeah. So but the nice thing is, because the generic music is at a 2, then in the boss levels they kick it up to like a 6, and that's the thing is, I'm a big proponent of believing that human beings are terrible at tracking absolutes. We're good at tracking change, And so basically, if you've got music that's constantly at an 8, you're eventually just going to set yourself at like, oh, well, this is an 8, this is normal. And then when you want to like be like, well, now it's super serious, well, then you got to kick it up to an 11, you know? But this one, it's like the music's really fun, really peppy, really enjoyable. And hey, it's gotten a little bit more serious, FYI. So you're at like a 6 now, but realistically, all you're registering is the jump from a 2 to a 6, which is a jump of 4, and that gets your attention, you know?
Right. And I think I agree with you about absolutes, but we're worse at absolutes, but we're not incapable of judging absolutes. And the change from a 2 to a 6 is like, oh, things are substantially more serious, but I don't expect anyone to pull out a gun. I'm not expecting Pyramid Head from the Silent Hill universe to like come in and brutally murder me, right? Like I still know that I'm somewhere in that middle range in terms of how tense I should be, right? Whereas if it went from a 9 to an 11, then it's like I was already on pins and needles constantly. And even though there's only been a slight change, I'm now very aware that like we've gone off the dial. And it's like,
there's a great Dorkly video where if you haven't seen it, you should absolutely check it out. It's what if Bowser had actual guns, you know?
Instead of bullet bills.
Yeah. And so it just kind of shows Bowser walking into a Koopa's area where there are just like these bullet bills and the bullet cannons like everywhere. And he goes like, hey, so hey John, who builds all of the bullets, how's it going? He's like, oh, pretty good. And Bowser just pulls out like a Glock and just shoots him in the leg. He goes like, oh my God, why did you do that? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, did I shoot you with the real gun? You know, and he goes like, what's going on? It's like, why do you make the bullets so big and travel so slow? Well, bigger bullets are harder to dodge. And he shoots him in the leg again. He's like, oh, could you dodge that one? Huh? He's like, well, I just thought it'd be better. He's like, tell that to my seven children. Oh, wait, you can't, can you? So yeah, no, at no point does the tone shift to the point where I think all of a sudden, Fuzzy is going to pull out a knife and start,
and shank you.
Yeah, exactly.
Or no, shiv. Or, wait, crap.
Yeah, shank.
Shank. Shiv is the noun, shank is the verb. Which again is important knowledge to have.
Make sure that we get our verbiage correct.
Yeah, it's important background knowledge to have in the adorable crayon colored universe of Yoshi's Island.
Oh my God, you shivved me. No, I shanked you. Like, just picturing Yoshi saying that, to the frog. Anyways, but yeah.
So let me ask you if you notice this. When you eat an egg, because the eating, making egg, and throwing egg noises are probably some of the most common sound effects in the entire game.
Certainly at the action, I would argue that you do the most aside from maybe your hover jump. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, you might throw 3 or 4 eggs to every time you hover jump. There's lots of regular jumps, just like kind of jump, but oh God, and I hate that. Yeah, which wasn't as bad in Yoshi's Island, but the version of it that's stuck in my head is the Super Smash Brothers version, which is like a much louder, more guttural. Like you can hear him like pleading with his god to let him not fall off the edge of the universe and die. At least in the original Yoshi's Island, it's like hover, 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 not help me.
And you see, it's interesting because I have a different thought on that for the Smash Brothers one, because whenever I would hear that sound, I was like, that means that something, a problem that I thought was gone has come back to roost, because I thought that you were gone, but now you're coming back to give me more problems. So, literally, guy. I have it more along the lines of, like when I hear that, I just think about grabbing the Yoshi and going, long live the king, and just throwing him back off the level. So, but yeah, anyways, you were talking about the egg eating sound effect.
Yeah, so I haven't gotten the results back from the lab yet, but I have a pretty high level of confidence that the sound it makes when you swallow. So try and imagine like you have something in your mouth. So not the like lick, the like slurpy noise, but when you actually press down and it goes like boop and makes an egg, that is the exact same sound it makes when Mario is underwater and like takes a breaststroke. Yeah. And if I'm right, why Why is it that noise? And why does it perfectly work for both of those visuals?
Well, again, I think that, and the more that we're discussing this, I'm just kind of coming to it as we're talking. But you know, older games, especially good ones, like Mario and Super Mario World, Mario 2, Yoshi's Island, The Legend of
Still feels weird. I can't
Yeah.
think of any games that start with that title. Go on.
No, I think it's Legends of the Fall, something.
You're thinking
I
of
forget.
Final Fantasy.
Yeah, Final Fantasy Legends of Grandia. Anyways, but yeah, games like that where they are the empty cup, right? They're the blank slate. They're why Keanu Reeves keeps getting work, where it's just the sound is just so kind of foreign that it fills so many different roles and niches because that's vague. It's a vague sound, and I would believe that that's what cartoonish swimming through water sounds like. And a similar noise could be this other thing. Sure, I don't, especially with the Yoshi. I've never seen an animal consume another animal and then immediately turn it into an egg. So I have no frame of reference for what that would sound like in the real world.
Well, I assume that there's a chance that what you're actually seeing is he's eating an animal, which then pushes the last animal he ate, or maybe 3 or 4 animals ago, through the end of his digestive tract, which is why you have to eat an animal to produce let's not beat around the bush. You have to eat another sentient creature that exists in your world.
Yep.
And brutally murder it to push an egg out. Not that the one you just ate, like he gets to suffer in your digestive tract for a while.
So you're basically the Sarlacc pit.
Yes.
Cool.
I mean, I assume at the other end of the planet that has the Sarlacc pit are a bunch of eggs floating in space. That's no moon.
Now I'm just picturing like the Tatooine, the planet, and the huge battle on the Sarlacc pit, and it just pans away, and as it's getting smaller and smaller, you see it's just like a gland in Yoshi's Yoshi's neck, and it just like pulls out, and it's just like, I bet you didn't see that coming,
See, now that's the kind of thing a Yoshi would think about when it hits a Mr. Dizzy thing.
Yep. That's a fuzzy thought. Actually, now I'm going to think, I think that we should try to push for all high thoughts just being called fuzzy thoughts, because
Headcanon accepted.
It's like I had a fuzzy thought the other day. Anyways, but yeah, no, I thought that the sound effects overall, like I said, the music's amazing, and the sound effects overall, I thought they were good, and I thought that they telegraphed what was going on. For example, like you said, the tongue, eat, make into an egg, right? That sound I thought was actually particularly not loud, but in stark contrast to basically anything else that sounds like that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's important because the visual, depending on exactly what you're doing and when and where it happens, and also how many eggs you already have, is not amazing for whether or not you actually made the egg, because
you kind of need the little bloop noise.
Yeah, it's that way you can be like, okay, I made the egg, because sometimes, depending on what you're doing, it can just pop out behind you and then immediately join in the cavalcade of eggs. Just seeing how many different synonyms I can use for group of eggs, your
little egg train.
Yeah. So, but that visual isn't amazing as far as letting the player know that yes, you did hit down and it made the egg. So I thought that was needed to have that kind of really crisp sound to let you know.
Well, and before we get off the egg noise, I need to know, is that the sound of him swallowing, or is that the sound of the egg coming out?
My headcanon was always that it's him passing the egg. Like, like that's the sound it makes as, like it's just fired out, right?
Yep. This is what we're talking about.
Yep. And also so sorry, I just want to touch on your idea that he has N number of eggs in his digestive tract, like currently
Well,
calcifying or
yeah, I
whatever?
mean, various stages of decay. You know, the one he just ate is presumably struggling for its life and cursing its god. And
Right.
then the ones further along are long dead and in various states of like mummification, I guess.
I don't have time for creatures whose gods have abandoned them. But um yeah, so okay, so that's fine and awful. But that means like what percentage do you think of Yoshi's body mass then is Yoshi versus, because like those eggs are big, so if he's got even 3 of them in process in him, then that would be the majority of his internal structure.
Yeah, I mean, Yoshi's they have access to Time Lord technology.
Okay, so Yoshi's bigger on the inside.
Well, I'm gonna say he's gotta be because, or that inside him is not bound by the same physics as outside him, and outside him is not bound by the same physics as the rest of the world. Because we know from Super Mario World that eggs can contain both baby Yoshis and full grown Yoshis. And we also know that the baby Yoshis are capable of eating things many times their size. And then they go into the black hole that is the inside of a Yoshi. So I'm going to say that whatever physics are happening inside of a Yoshi and inside of a Yoshi egg are like they are foreign to us. Like they are consistent and predictable, but we know them not.
So no, I can get on board with that. It's basically like the subspace excuse, where like we just magic basically that
the universe moves around the ship.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah, no, that's legit. I'm on board with that. But yeah, do you have anything else for sound?
I want to kind of give a nod to the fact that you hear certain sounds in this game almost with the frequency that you hear like the gun firing noise in like a bullet hell game, and yet that noise, the slurp noise, the swallow noise, or egg producing noise, depending on which camp you fall in there, and then the targeting noise, because the targeting noise is like a loud beeping. It's almost like a childish sonar noise would be, like you hear those noises virtually nonstop throughout gameplay, and yet they never became grating. I was never annoyed. I was never like, oh my God, that sound again. Like it's just perfectly acceptable. And that's not nothing. To have a noise that is useful because you are aware of it, like you said, you are listening for that egg being made sound, or like if the tongue noise is interrupted and he makes like the little painful face because it's something you can't eat. Like you are definitely still aware of those sounds. They never just become background noise, and yet somehow they don't become incredibly grating and annoying. And that's, as a sound designer, that is probably like you win awards for that. Like, here's a sound you hear 20,000 times in an hour of gameplay, but it doesn't make you want to kill yourself.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, and one that I never really thought of is, to hear the same thing over and over and over again. Anybody who has kids knows how very quickly and creating like, hey, mama, mommy, like that.
All of that.
Yeah, that gets
and
on
if you're
your
a good
nerves.
parent, you can't tune it out. And if you're a bad parent, you have tuned it out.
It's true. But yeah, no, so the fact that and I think that the key then is that the sound has to be satisfying, and it is, in all those instances. The sound is, I'm like, ooh, yeah, that's a good thing. Now if every time you made an egg, it was the death scream from Golden Axe,
Now I wish I knew how to do ROM hacks, because I would totally go find the ROM for this, find the ROM for that, and then like super collide those things together.
Which you kind of should be, considering that, like we've said before, is you're taking sentient creatures and designing them to the hell of an egg. But but just like blip, blip, like that would be awful, and I'd probably stop making eggs pretty quickly.
Yeah, then it becomes like a no-kill challenge. Like, can I beat this game eating as few Shy Guys as possible? So, and I mean, we can't talk about the sound without at least mentioning the baby crying noise.
Yeah, that's insufferable, and it should be though. Like
Right, and it should be.
yeah, like you want that noise to stop, and um, I think that's a good thing. I think it's good that it hits that emotion or evolutionary level of a baby is crying. Fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it.
Kill everything that is making the baby cry and make the baby stop crying.
Yeah, although I think that it's a little counterintuitive sometimes to when the baby's crying and he's too high for you to effectively go grab him and soothe him. So you throw an egg at him to bring him closer to you. Like that.
You can also pull him onto your back with your tongue.
You absolutely do that. But sometimes if he's like really, really, really high, and this kind of bleeds into mechanics, but that's one of the things that they do is they'll point. Like if he's off screen, they point at like where he is. Like they give you an arrow, you know?
Yes.
So like I would just sometimes just throw eggs at the arrow because I'm like, I can't get to you, you know? So I'm going to pelt you with eggs to bring you closer to me.
I don't know where you are. Stop crying, stop crying, stop crying, stop crying.
Stop it.
Could you imagine like the real life comparison? Like you are, head down on the table because you're super hungover and your kid is like running around in the kitchen around you and like gets hurt and starts crying and you just start throwing things off the table without looking at them. And then when the crying stops, you stop throwing things because that's essentially what happens.
Yeah. No. Well, especially because I'm picturing that exact scenario where basically you just hear like crying, and you can't like really see exactly where it is. So you look up and then there's a crosshair that appears in your field of vision because that's totally what happens. And so you've just got the noise in your sights and you're just hurling stuff at it. Yeah, no, I like that. But
and I think, just like for my own mental sake, and I think this is probably true for you too, but correct me if I'm wrong. Like while I was playing the game, like while the controller is actually in my hand and I'm doing these things, I occasionally had the thought flitter through my head of like, oh, that was kind of violent, or like, like, oh, that was a little more aggressive than I remembered as a kid. But largely, the kid visuals and the kid sound effects and the whole like kind of playful, childish aesthetic of the game, like held up really well as an adult. Like I mean, we're having our fun because we do love to have a laugh. We do, but
that we do.
But I really was very easily able to sink back into like I am a kid playing this childish game again, and I am super cool with it.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that, when like you said, we joke around like, you stomp on a bad guy and it pow explodes.
The music just stopped and we both looked toward the camera and we're like, we've had a lot of fun here today. but now let's get serious.
But what we'd really like to talk about is making mice eat other mice. That's not cool. Okay.
The more you know.
Yeah. So no, but I mean, like that explodey thing. But it's very similar to when Wile E. Coyote would, like you said, get like hit by the bus, and it'd be like bam, pow, and you're just So now as an adult, you're saying like, oh my god, and your brain's immediately walking through, all right, well that bus was moving at approximately 60 miles an hour, having an average mass of blankety blank, so on and so forth. But I mean, honestly, the visual itself is not visceral. It's just you're projecting viscerality upon it. Viscerality, visceral imitude,
viscerosity.
Yeah,
I like imitude as a suffix. That's also good.
But yeah. So overall, thought all of that was good, enjoyable, and definitely held up.
And we've been dipping into controls and mechanics basically since the word go. So controls and mechanics.
So one thing that I just want to touch on because, and I mentioned this to you offhand in one of our conversations, but that I did. So, okay. So when you beat a boss, right, Mario gets a key, right? And that key allows you to open universe to the next world, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, they're not totally clear on why that visual happens, but okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's innocuous. It's gamey, it's fine, and it's fun, it's enjoyable, whatever. But it's one of the few times that baby Mario specifically interacts with the world. I do not know why, but the minute that like that key appears and Mario holds it up and then the key like pops and then you go on to the next world, I was like, hold the phone, paused it, right? And the key is about as long as it's about as big as Mario. So, got my notes here. Assuming that the average child is 55 centimeters in length, and using that as the length of the key.
So wait, what age did you draw 55 centimeters from?
Infant.
Okay.
Specifically because Mario was intercepted on his way
en route. I mean, he's technically a newborn, but
right. Yeah.
Let's not split fictional hairs.
And I think it said like most newborns are between like 35 and 55 centimeters. And I went with the upper limit because the key I think is actually a little bit bigger than he is, So
that's fair.
Yeah. So it's just like, that's going to be approximately correct. And so then using those dimensions and approximating the other dimensions of the key based off of that length, multiplying that because it's a golden key, so I assume that the key is made of gold or if worst case scenario, other similarly hard material, right?
And surely you're going with solid gold. There's no way it's hollow.
Yeah. I mean, it's exactly. So assuming all of these things, I calculate that the key's volume is approximately 1,920.83 cubic centimeters, right? So using the density of gold, that gives you a key that weighs about 37.11 kilograms or about 70 pounds.
It's actually, I mean, he's a baby, so like that would definitely crush him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, because I mean, assuming that he himself weighs probably about 8 pounds, right? And he just hefts it like it's no big deal, right? Like, there's no arm trembling animation. There's not. He's like, I got a key. Bam, door open, gone. So at this point, one question, and this is not even his final form because he does turn into Super Mario at one point and can like run up walls and stuff. So at some point I was just kind of like, does Mario need Yoshi?
No.
Because that's a strong baby, like a really strong baby,
Yeah, I mean, and when you think about the way Mario and Yoshi interact, I mean, the Yoshis are like hanging out. Mario falls from the sky, and then they're like, oh, crap, a baby. Oh, and I mean, because I actually watched the whole opening and it's like, oh, the baby seems to know where it wants to go. But I don't remember, and I'm certainly not going to check. I don't remember the Yoshis saying like, and we have some kind of moral obligation to help this baby. It's the baby seems to know where it wants to go. And then for the rest of the game, the Yoshis are slaves to Mario's will. So, I mean, there's definitely, it is not a stretch to say that he is utilizing these Yoshis to accomplish his goals, not because the Yoshis are helping him accomplish his goals. Like he is from day one of Mario's life, he has been enslaving Yoshis. And we know that in Super Mario World, when he's an adult, if he needs a Yoshi to die to make that last jump or to get to that bonus area, that Yoshi's life is forfeit.
Oh, yes. No, the Yoshis all are living on borrowed time so long as Mario exists.
So long as Mario walks the world, no Yoshi is safe.
No Yoshi is safe. Their lives are not their own, like Mario is.
So in Super Mario World, when you hit a block that has a full-grown Yoshi egg in it, which is most of them, and it makes the like whoop noise like when he pops out. I always thought that was like the sound of him like either inflating or like saying hello or the way like a dog might like make a barking or a yapping noise like when it sees its master. I think that is Yoshi for, oh God, he found me.
Yeah, because like maybe the reason why they're bubbled in eggs is it's similar to Cell, where they revert back to their larval state so that way they can be in an egg, and then they're smuggled through the underground railroad to like actually get out. And then
those question mark blocks are safe houses. Like, oh, there's no Yoshis in here. I don't know what's in here, but it's not a Yoshi.
Definitely not a Yoshi. And then all of a sudden it's a Yoshi. And then because the first time you find a Yoshi in the game, he goes, "You saved me," but it's totally a lie, because it's just kind of, it's like, "Oh, thank God you're here. You saved me." He's like, "Please don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me." And actually the sounds that he makes when he first appears, and then the sound that he makes when you get on him, I think is the same sound.
Yes, it is.
It's the sound of a broken will. It is the sound of enslavement. Dark, man. I don't know. I'm a little tired. Like maybe I don't know why we keep going to the dark place in this amazingly uplifting and very enjoyable kids game.
I am always fascinated by the hook that sinks itself into our brains during these conversations, and then we seem completely unable to shake.
No.
We've gone down some roads I never could have planned or predicted, and so far I've been totally cool with it. But one day we're gonna get to like the end of an episode and just be like, there's just no way we can release this, and not necessarily because it'll be something horrible, but it'll just be like we accidentally just proved there's no God, or we accidentally just made like political relations between like China and Taiwan way worse, like because of this like Nintendo soccer game. Like we can never let this out.
So we went in to go talk about Excite Bike, and we ended up proving that there is no God. So anyways, it doesn't Homer do that? He starts off with a flat tax proposal. And then,
yes, that's exactly. And then he gives it to Flanders, and Flanders sets it on fire, and then Homer's putting one on every car windshield on the street.
Yep. Yeah, I think he hands it to Ned, and he goes like, "Well, let me just check your math here." And well, let me just double. Nope. It's airtight. So as long as we're strolling down awful thoughts lane, one of the mechanics.
There's like a whole section left to talk about, and we have now committed to keeping that theme.
Apparently, or at least I'm just gonna. I'm on this boat until this boat stops taking me places that I want to go, and I want to go here. So, the Shy Guys, right?
Uh-huh.
You can totally eat them, and I don't know if this is true of all the enemies, but I do know it's true of the Shy Guys. You can eat them, and then spit them out and eat them again.
Yes, that's true of, I would say, more than half of the enemy types, which I mean is helped along by the fact that most of the enemies are variations of Shy Guys.
Right.
But yeah, most of the enemies you can eat, regurgitate ad infinitum until they collide with something and explode.
Yes. So one of the things that I did at one point was one of the Shy Guys like hit me. And I don't know why, but you ever like play a video game and thing A happens 15 times, and then the 16th time you're like, no, this is the straw. We're done here. So I lost Mario a number of times, as you do, and this one Shy Guy, I don't know why. I didn't know if I didn't like his face or what his deal was, but he knocked Mario off my back, and so I ate him. I spat him out and I ate him, and I juggled him for probably about a solid 3 minutes, just not letting him go, neither letting him exist or expire, but just simply, be in this horrible holding pattern in my mouth before I turned him into an egg and then slammed him directly into a wall. I don't know why I suddenly got so vindictive with this one, but that was the one. But I did think that was an interesting mechanic.
And you, it's like in a bad romantic comedy where you made him pay for the sins of all previous Shy Guys that had wronged you, because it's like you guys were just walking down the street and he actually wasn't an enemy Shy Guy. He was just like foolishly reading the newspaper while he was walking down the street and like bumped into you, and he was like, "Oh, hey, sorry, buddy," and then you just turned around and you were like, "Time for purgatory," and just like put him in your mouth and spat him, and he's just like getting the crap beat out of him by your giant monster tongue and intestinal tract. Yeah, that is an interesting mechanic.
Yeah, it's kind of odd. Yeah, no, I like your idea. Like he like bumps into you. He's like, "Oh, sorry, dude." It just shows like Yoshi like slowly turn and like death metal starts playing in the background.
just just suddenly like Metalocalypse and flames and the flame eyes.
But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting that they, let you do that, because one of the things that this game does, and I think it's very important, is just straight up defy the laws of physics in the name of giving you increased control on like what's happening. So, for example, like when you spit out an enemy, and for whatever reason you decided that's not something you wanted to do, you can get them back.
Right.
You can similar mechanics, like being able to change your trajectory midair somehow. Or even in this one, being able to double jump, like things like that give you increased control over where you are in two-dimensional space or what you're capable of doing. I think empower the player, and since this isn't about disempowerment, it's about having a fun game where you platform, I think is very important.
Well, the fact that you exploited the eating mechanic in like a kind of psychopathic way is I think it's interesting that that's how you chose to torture that Shy Guy, because the eating mechanic is like really central to the gameplay, and there's just enough variation with it that it kind of keeps you don't just eat your way through 6 worlds like a psychopathic Pac-Man, because
Right.
the certain enemy, like the Shy Guys, when you spit them out, I think if they don't hit anything, they kind of roll for a while, but not
Yeah.
forever, but for a while. So they can eventually become a threat again, but they're not likely to. And since
Mhm.
Shy Guys are the most common kind of enemy, if you accidentally spit one out and you don't re-eat him, he could become a threat again, but I don't think it's very likely. He'll probably collide with something. Both of those things die, or he falls off a cliff or whatever, and then it's done.
Right.
But then, like turtle shells, you cannot turn those, or Koopa Troopa shells, you cannot turn those into eggs. You have to regurgitate them, and they bounce off everything forever until they either hit something and explode or until they fall off the map. So, like, the way you interact with Koopa Troopa shells, even though you're still doing the eating regurgitating mechanic, is different. And then there's like the monkeys, which if you spit a monkey out, they only bounce like one time and then almost immediately become a threat again.
Right. Yeah.
So you have to either turn them into an egg or spit them out in such a way that you know they're going to die or stop being a problem. And then you even get a few other little fun variations, like the watermelons, which is cool because it gives you like the shotgun, but as long as you have the watermelon in your mouth, you can't eat anything else. So
Right.
like it mixes up that, and then there's even variations on the watermelon where you can get the ice melon or the fire melon. So they kind of took a really straightforward mechanic of like eat egg, throw egg, and mixed it up enough that you still can, like, the way you and I might move from point A to point B through a level might be completely different, because you might eat guys and regurgitate those guys so they crash into each other and die, whereas I might always like eat egg, throw egg, or I might want to have a full stack of eggs so that I can find watermelons, so that I can be spitting watermelons and throwing eggs like some kind of Yoshi Rambo. Like there's enough variation in that mechanic that it gives you actually a surprising amount of flexibility in your play style.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think that all that was awesome. And also kind of from a game design standpoint, you could also get items that you could then hang on to or then use, So like you could, not only can you get like watermelons in the stages, but you can get a watermelon like item that you can then just use whenever you want it, you know?
Yeah, the little item card bonus level thingies.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
like that's kind of neat too, because then all of a sudden, if you're just kind of like, yeah, you know what I really want is this other, like I want a watermelon here. And also too, then, it allows the game designer to create a situation where they haven't given you everything you need to solve the puzzle. You have to be able to bring in this outside tool to solve it. So you can walk into something and be like, I may not actually have everything that I need, but they're really good at telegraphing what tool you should have, And speaking of that, I was just completely floored, honestly, by the density of this game, Because honestly, about halfway through playing, I I realized I'm like, I have to just go from start to finish on each stage. Otherwise, I'm not going to get anywhere, because I took about 3 hours into the game and had just barely gotten through World 1, because and to me, the way I liken it is that a lot of games, especially a lot of platformers, do things where, they're like, hey, there's, like maybe a secret area over here or a little offshoot. This is more than that, in my opinion. This is almost closer to like platforming side quests, where basically
I like that.
where basically they'll show you like a flower, and then you'll see this bizarre series of things that you're like, you can kind of figure out, all right, well, I would need to do this, and first I need to get here, and it's absolutely workoutable and completely bypassable too, so you can very easily blow through a level in a minute and move on to the next thing, or spend 20 minutes working through each side quest puzzle, which I think is amazing, because it just literally gives you the depth. Like, if you just want to play through the game and beat it, you could probably do that in, I don't know, a few hours, right? But there is still hours upon hours upon hours of gameplay in here,
Well, and do you know what one of the most significant changes to this game compared to Super Mario World that they had to make to enable that sort of level design? There's no timer.
True that. Yeah.
So you can, there's 20 secret red coins in every level. And if you look closely, there's actually a tiny little orange shadow on the regular coins. So you can, if you have sharp eyes, actually tell that's a red coin, that's not, right? And since they're usually with other coins, if you look closely, you can pick it out. And there's one other time that the coin has that animation, probably because they had to reuse that animation. It irritates me because those coins are not red coins. But anyway, you can spend all the time you want trying to figure out how to ricochet an egg and make it get the flower, or how to, dig all this ground away to find the little secret question mark cloud, or to, look for all 20 red coins in every level, because you're not on anyone else's time, which is a huge, huge departure from, at this point in history, every other Mario game, right? Like, you can just sit there and stare at the trees if you want, because you're never going to run out of time, which is something like, this is kind of a visual thing, but I saved it until we started talking about mechanics to mention it, is not only is there no timer, but you have no HUD.
Yeah. I mean,
all of your information is on the pause screen.
Right. All of your information is on the pause screen. The only thing that will pop up is when you lose Baby Mario, his timer, like how long until he expires.
Yes. And if you stand still for more than like 2 seconds, like, it's a very short amount of time, but if you stand still, it will show you how many stars you have. So you know, like, before I go into this situation where I am likely to lose him, how many stars do I have? And I think if you have less than 10, it stays on screen until it gets back to 10, and then it goes away.
I think that the damage mechanic is really useful or good in this area, because previous Marios were basically, if you were regular Mario, like small Mario, you got hit, you died. Something touched your hitbox, you're done. And then if you were like Big Mario, Fire Mario, then you lost that ability. And it actually meant that, like, if you were Fire Mario and you got hit by a Koopa Troopa shell, you lost your ability to be Fire Mario, which could be significantly damaging, which means the game designers had to be really careful with exactly how they designed the game, because one hit could completely change the outcome, right? That's not true here. I mean, first of all, I still think they did a great job with, like, every time I got hit, I felt like it was my fault,
Yes. Yeah, there's very few places in the game where you're like, come on.
Yeah, like, that was garbage, or what the heck, like. But that being said, even with that, I felt like I could play it a little bit faster and looser, because, you lose Mario and you've got 10 seconds to get him back. And then the timer does slowly crawl back up to 10. So basically, I knew that I was in trouble if I lost Mario, that was fine. It was if I lost Mario a lot quickly, you
Mhm.
know? And that's good because that means I am probably doing something wrong. If I lose Mario, I get him back. I lose Mario, I get him back. I lose. Yeah, no, I'm not doing it right, you know?
Right.
So yeah, I thought that was very well done. And also, something that you alluded to, the stars, right? So, they do give you the ability to be like, hey, because I didn't really bust myself too hard to get stars because I wasn't really losing Mario a whole lot. But if you do have a tendency to lose Mario, well, they're like, well, here's some extra stuff to help you kind of almost shift the game's mode to a little bit easier, but it's not because you feel like you're doing it,
Right.
So,
Well, and I noticed too that the handful of times you're around, like the tall yellow spikes that are weirdly tall, or the blue, like pointy spikes that you can actually smash with your eggs,
mhm.
those are one hit kills. Like if you touch those, you don't drop Mario, you die.
Right.
And when you're around those obstacles, which are usually like in castles, they feel way scarier because it's not like, oh, if I touch that, I'm going to drop Mario and then I got to go get him back and it's going to be an inconvenience. It's like, oh, that is one of the few things in the world that can end my life.
Yeah.
Because even like if you drop Mario and something hits you, you do like a little spin and then you like flop down and it takes another second or two before you can get up and go get Mario. So like the threat of getting hit is real because you either drop Mario or it delays you getting Mario back. But then when you are around something that actually like makes you lose a life where your little, Yoshi X number counter goes down, like they feel appropriately more scary. You're like, oh crap, it's spikes. Like can't go running through this area like a jackass because if I drop Mario, I can get him back. I actually need to be thoughtful here.
Yeah, no, it was definitely very similar to you know, where if somebody said, hey, this will hurt you, and you're like, yeah, but it will also prevent you from regenerating, Logan, and you're like, whoa, wait, like this, yeah, like crushing deaths were the same thing, when you
Right.
died because some big old heavy thing fell on you, and I knew that, but I had kind of forgotten. So the first area where they had, things that could crush you, I was like, yeah, jumping around. It's all good. It's all good. Oh God, I died. Right. That's not a lose Mario. That's an insta kill, and so then I was just a lot more respectful of those areas. And I will say also for the game design, the first place where you're likely the first place where I died via crushing. And in my opinion, the first place where you're really likely to, there's a little circle save area right before it. So, they're like, hey, this is the first time we're really going to push this mechanic. You have a higher chance of beating it. So save right beforehand so you can immediately try it again,
Yeah, Nintendo's design, like game and level design, is usually pretty top notch, but their best work is in the Mario series. Like,
Oh, yeah.
they usually have an incredibly high success rate of like mechanic teach you in a safe space, separate mechanic teach you in a safe space, combine multiple mechanics, and now expect you to negotiate these platforms and this enemy at the same time, or these two enemies that move differently at the same time, or whatever. And I mean, man, like they're just experts at it. Like they're really good at it. And I think like we've probably made this joke before. You've probably heard this joke before about like when Mario Maker came out. You can almost imagine the level designers at Nintendo being like, oh, you think you're so smart? Like, here, you make a Mario game. And then there are people who are smart, but I think a lot of people played Mario Maker and they were like, Christ, this is so hard.
Yeah. No, I mean, I almost fortunately never had to play Mario Maker because I never had to have that realization of, like just that we stand upon the shoulders of giants and just how deep the rabbit hole goes. But yeah, no, when you actually go back and break it down, most Mario games are a master class in game design, and teaching through gameplay. Like you never feel like you're in class. And actually on that note, though, one of the things that is in this game that was also in Super Mario World, and I think like we see it crest around this time, maybe Mario 64, and then kind of fall back down, which is good, is those godforsaken help boxes. I hated those. I hated those for two reasons.
This does have a way higher occurrence of help boxes. And I feel like there are times where you are given a help box where, having played this game so many times, it's hard to remember what it was like the first time, where like I would hit a help box and they're like, did you know you can do whatever thing? And I was like, I've been doing that for 2 worlds. Like, where have you been, help box? Like, were people really expected to play up until now without knowing they could do that? Like, come on, this isn't very helpful.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. So, and one of the things is that because Mario is so good with its level design, and they're just kind of like, hey, don't forget, you can do thing A, it's like, well, yeah, but you didn't need to tell me that. Your game was already teaching me that. Like, for one of them was, if you step on the whatever it is that turns Mario into Super Mario, it's like, if you step on that, he'll become, oh yeah, you're right, it's a star. And it's like, he'll become Super Mario and he can run along walls. And it's like, that's fine, except for the fact that you put a big, giant, glowing star, like, right in the dead center of a screen on a platform. I mean, of course, I'm going to go touch that, and see what that's about.
And the part of the level that you have right after where I get the star could only be beaten in a world where I could run up walls.
Exactly. It can only be beaten in the world where I can run up walls. And there's no real bad guys around or anything to stop me from immediately running up this wall. It's an incredibly safe space.
Yeah. Also, giant arrows. The wall is curved in a way that's very unusual and inviting compared to most of the perfectly vertical sheer surfaces. Like, yeah, it really does make you wonder if they put it through playtesting and there was like one guy in the playtesting who was like, I didn't know what to do with this part. And there was like a nervous producer who was like, we got to put in boxes. And all the game designers were like, no, that one guy is not representative of the general population.
Yeah. Well, and I to me, I think that the mindset and again, I think that's why we kind of see them start to crest and then fall back out. It's like, well, it's a help box. If they don't need help, they just won't hit the help box. It's like, no, that's not true, because I don't know what the help box is going to tell me.
No, it's worse than that. So if you hit a help box at all from any direction and with anything, it activates the help box. And I got stuck.
Everything comes to an ass grinding halt.
Yes. Yep. And I got stuck in a Sisyphusian hell where I got hit by something and dropped Mario. And in trying to recover him, a turtle shell was launched and bounced off the wall and hit the help box, which made it bounce back against the wall and then bounce back and hit the help box. And this happened like 6 times, which took like 24 minutes because everything stops when the help box is open, where I actually had to realize, like, the only way I can stop pushing this boulder up the hill is to eat the boulder. So I had to stop, like I had to let Mario float off into obscurity and eat the turtle shell again so it would stop hitting the help box and then go rescue Mario. Like, it was, I'm sure the entire encounter only took like 45 seconds, but it felt like hours of like just this purgatory of like, oh my God, that thing is, because I mean, it bounces with perfect, it loses no momentum off of each ricochet. So I was like, it's going to keep doing this forever.
It is a perfectly elastic collision. Yes. It is. It conserves all of its momentum and energy somehow. Magic.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And that you pretty much hit the nail on the head of. The second reason why I hate those is because they are just so easy to activate. And I had a similar experience, though mine was way much more my fault. Was like, so do you ever, or a good example would be, you put something in the microwave, right? You put it in the microwave for 15 minutes, like way too long. And so you reach into the microwave because you want the food. And so you grab the bowl's way too goddamn hot, right? So you drop the bowl and the bowl lands and some food goes out. So you clean up the food and then your brain says, hey, you still want to eat that. So you just reach out and grab the bowl again. And then you burn yourself, which then spills some more food. So you clean up the food. And now enough time's passed again that you just instinctively reach out for the bowl again. And at some point you just have to be like, no, stop it. So that's what I did, which was like, I've forgotten what it was, but there was something off screen in a direction where I knew there was a flower or something in that direction, or a red coin. So threw an egg. Oh no, that's what it was. Is I was trying to hit a flower. I threw an egg and I missed. And so it bounced off the ground and then bounced off screen. But right on the edge of that screen, there must have been a help box. It was like, egg at the flower. And it's like, did you know? And I'm like, shut up. Okay. Flower missed again. Did you know? No, shit, stop it. Did you know? God, no, you know what? I don't need the flower. I'm good. We're fine. We're fine. We're fine. And I just like moved on because I literally couldn't deal with activating that help ticket accidentally hitting refresh on my help ticket one more time, you know?
Well, and eventually you would have been like a sad junkie sitting there swinging with no eggs because it still does like the throwing animation
Yeah.
and makes like a sad like you're out of eggs noise, and you would have just been like, did you know?
I didn't know. I didn't know. Yeah. So those help boxes, like I said, I think that because there have definitely been games where I have thought that help boxes could be useful. I think that there's always a better way to do it, you know, but there are definitely some games where I'm like, well, you know, this is ham-handed, but would have been helpful because this other thing was lacking. But it's just kind of like somebody saying, you know, hey, you're going into a restaurant where it is a 5-star restaurant. All they do is just serve amazing food. But first, we're going to make you read the first 10 Yelp reviews of it. And it's like, I don't need that. This is clearly, I can just look at this place and tell you that it's an amazing, you know, like that this is exactly what I'm going to be getting out of this experience. And so in Mario, who wrote the book on level design and teaching through gameplay, it's like almost like insulting that they felt the need to put hell boxes in. It's like, you're better than this. You know that you are, you know?
Well, and I think I could go on about this thought I'm about to like TLDR on you in a lot greater length, but we're rapidly coming up on the 2-hour mark. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time. But
Sweet.
so, you know, moving into hour 4 here. Now it's I think that a lot of the help boxes you could see that they are afraid that they have set too many precedents in earlier Mario games, that their level design and that their mechanics might not be self-evident in a world where people know what Mario is. So, for example, one of the things I noticed while I was playing is my thumb kept like hovering toward Y. Like I really wanted to hold down that run button, man, but you don't. You don't do that. Yoshi only runs.
Right.
Like, you know, whereas like when you're Super Mario and little baby Super Mario, you do actually have to hold down the run button because Mario can walk or run. Yoshi only runs because his buttons have to do the eating mechanic and the swallowing mechanic and the throwing mechanic and the spitting mechanic and all these other things. And having to make him then also decide between running and walking would be needlessly cumbersome. And if you took Super Mario World 2 : Yoshi's Island and handed it to someone who'd never played before, this is so obviously not a TLDR, by the way. If you took this and handed it to someone who'd never played before, I think the mechanics and the way the universe functions would be largely self-evident because of the level design. But if you take that game knowing full well that you are introducing it to people who have probably played all the other Mario games, it's like, but they're not going to know this thing is different. How will we make it obvious? Let's just literally spell it out for them. Yeah, okay, that sounds pretty safe. And it's like, you guys, you didn't need to do that. Your levels are pretty great.
Yeah, exactly. So the big question, which I think we, in general, with most of these episodes, have already answered, did it hold up?
Oh, so good, man. And I've replayed this many times as an adult, and so when we decided we were going to play this one, I was like, well, now I don't need to like play a game because I'll just play this anyway.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I'm in the same boat. I've picked this one up a couple of times since I was young, and it's just so delightful. It just absolutely holds up. The sound is delicious. The visuals are amazing. The gameplay is enjoyable. And I think it's, like we said, like it's a very relaxed experience. It's definitely a game where you can just pick this up, play it, and be less stressed by the time you're done. You know, just like, it's just great.
Yeah,
Great.
They really spread the difficulty out across through your platforming side quests, where the levels do get harder, but I don't feel like they get harder with the same difficulty curve as like the original Super Mario World or most other Mario games. It's that the levels get harder on like a linear track, and the ability to get all of the side quest crap gets harder on like an exponential track. So by the time you reach the end of the game, you're like, yeah, I'm better than I was at the start because I learned how to do these things and I can navigate these more difficult obstacles through trial and error and experimentation. But to be good enough to like 100% every level is orders of magnitude more difficult than just beating the game. Most of the bosses are like fairly trivial. Most of the levels are fairly consistent in their difficulty curve, but if you want to get all 20 red coins in like World 6 compared to World 1, you got to go out of your way. You got to backtrack. You got to find secret things. Whereas in World 1, you'll just like trip over them.
Yeah, you'll just kind of trip, fall, and possibly 100 or at least over 90% it. Yeah, no, the game's amazing. It holds up very well. The only game I could think of that I would like just plug in and play more regularly than this one is another one that has a green themed protagonist. G.I. Joe is a great game.
Oh man, I thought for sure you were going to say Yoshi's Cookie. We should play Yoshi's Cookie because that has a green protagonist, and I know you love green protagonists.
I do. That I do.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile.